like most fires, they do eventually kind of fizzle out. And this one for me, just for where I'm at right now, what I'm focused on, this one has fizzled out. Welcome to Burning the Ships podcast, and I'm your host, Jason Seward. And today is going to be a little bit of a different episode. It'll actually be the final episode of the Burning the Ships podcast, for now anyway. After I've been thinking about this for the last couple months, and I'll get into all the details as to why and what led to this in a little bit. But ultimately, I've decided to kind of put the podcast on the shelf for now. And I'll say for now because who knows what might happen, 6 months or 6 years from now, right? But for now, it's something that is going to be in the best interest of, for me, my family, my company, all those things. And I'll get into that. So I'll kind of go back. And with this being the last podcast, I kind of wanted to reflect on a few things. And so we've been doing this. I mean, we're approaching 3 years now. And I should have looked at this before I started recording. I don't know how many episodes we've done. So I know it's over 200 and might be approaching like 250, maybe. I'm not sure. We've done it almost 3 years. For a while, we did 2 a week. And the last year or so, we've been doing 1 a week. So I think we're in that 200 to 250 range. But so there's been a lot of conversations, a lot of interviews, and a lot of interesting people that I've had on the show in that time period. So I kind of want to reflect back on, like, first of all, what led to me even doing the podcast. I think I covered that in the very first episode we ever did 3 years ago. And then kind of walk through like how all that went, what my vision was for the show, and then kind of what has led to me deciding to pull the plug on it for now. So as many of you know, probably everybody listening knows, about 3.5 years ago, so it would have been the end of 2022, I left my long-time corporate career with Virginia Farm Bureau Insurance. I was there almost 17 years. Basically, I grew up. That company raised me, essentially in a professional sense. But I was there for 17 years. Had a fantastic career, both from my production standpoint, but also my growth. Right, I grew a lot with that company. I had some. I can't tell you how fantastic of a career that was from a mentor standpoint. I had some wonderful mentors, some great leaders that, like I said earlier, they raised me into being a good professional, having a good business mind, a good leader, a good salesperson, all those things. But as I got further and further along in that journey, I always knew from really the time I was a kid, but that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And what kept me in that career so long was, but when I say I wanted to be an entrepreneur, I didn't know what. I didn't know what I wanted to have. I had all kinds of, at 15 years old, my friend and I had a lawn care business. We got business cards made and we were running that business and thought we had something. And every time I did something like that, even at that young age, I had visions of growing it up, like blowing it up, making it a very large company. Obviously, that didn't last beyond one summer, but after that, every step of my journey was trying to scratch an entrepreneurial itch. So after that, like during college and a few years or right after college, I was a commercial waterman. I went out every day using one of my friends' dad had, it still does, had a commercial crabbing license. So with those licenses, you can assign someone to run them, essentially. So I did that for a couple years. I'd go out, I'd set my crab pots. I would go out, every day and fish those pots. I think at one point I had gotten up to maybe 200 pots in the water. So I'd do 100 one day and 100 the next. Take my crabs, sell them, to various distributors and stuff like that. And I did that for a while and made good money with it. But even during that, I had visions of blowing it up. Like I kind of like I always joke, I felt like Forrest Gump or Bubba Gump, where I was going to turn this into a big crabbing empire. And so I was trying to do stuff with that. And I, when I worked at a restaurant, an Italian restaurant in the town I'm still live in, did that for several years as another job. But even during that, I was always in talks with the owner about building more, right? Blowing this up. And I'll run it. I'll buy it from you one day. Let's start this process now. And I did. I was there for, through high school and college and the summers and stuff, probably 5 years, coming back and forth, when I was in town working there. And that evolved to, at one point, we were working towards me owning that business. But something else came up and I pursued that, and on we went. Well, when I landed with Farm Bureau, um, it was a sales job, and I was given that freedom and flexibility and that independence to, I mean, it felt like I was a business owner, right? I had my book of business, I managed it, evolved to where I had my staff and my member. I was a manager for the company, so I had agents that I was responsible for, who were employees of Farm Bureau, but that I was their leader. So it gave me that sense of like building something and being responsible for it, and people answering to me and me having to provide for them from a leader standpoint and train and hire and all these things. Well, because I was getting that feeling, I settled into that career and somewhat got complacent in the sense of like, I've got all this security from this career, making plenty of money. I had plenty of flexibility and things like that. Yeah, I don't own it technically. I don't, and I'm not making big executive decisions, but the bubble that I was in under that company, I felt like I was an entrepreneur, right? It scratched that itch for me until it didn't. So probably, I know I'm dragging this out. Anybody that's listened to the show, this is the last episode. Y'all know I'm very good with a ramble. That's what we're going to do here, and on this last episode. So, but anyway, as I advanced in that career, I started again missing the fact that I don't own this. I don't have complete control. And it's not that I'm a control freak. I just like making the big decisions. I like having the big visions and being able to pursue that and being the ones that being the mind or the leader that gets to pull the levers and make the ultimate decisions. I just like having that, right? I desire that. Well, so I get further along in that career, and all along I was dabbling in real estate, but not really with a business behind it. Um, but around 2017, the years get blurry to me, but I think 2017 is when I kind of settled in and said, okay, I'm going to build a business aside from my career. Now, where that business, I didn't really have a vision for where it would go, but I knew it was going to be real estate, and eventually settled into like what niche I was going to be in, and that was buying and holding real estate. So started doing that. Not long after, Bill Phillips, who's my current business partner, we teamed up, started doing it together. We kind of combined our resources and our skills and started building that again alongside of a pretty demanding corporate career. It didn't take long to start to visualize where this would go, that we were having enough, uh, call it success, if you will, or we were seeing enough of a path in front of us and what we were building and where it was going, that um, we could envision being at a point where we could leave those careers sooner than, a normal retirement age, right? And then that kept escalating. It kept getting bigger and bigger. And where we thought like maybe by the time we're 50, we'll be able to leave our careers and focus on the real estate, that timeline started shortening. And it got to a point where maybe we can do this by the time I'm 40, which was 2022. And sure enough, that's where it got. So built that, ultimately decided to leave that career at the end of 2022. And leading up to that, I've talked about this on the podcast before, so I'm sorry for the redundancy, but leading up to that, the few years prior, when we knew that we were trying to build to something that would allow us the freedom to leave our corporate careers, we came up with this. We didn't come up with the idea or the story, but the story is burning the ships, burning the boats. And I'll give you the condensed version. In the 1500s, Hernan Cortez and his men, he led his men to what is now Mexico. But their mission was to basically claim that island or claim the land of what is now Mexico. And so the story goes, he pulls all his fleet of boats and all his men up to the shore. We're going to go invade, and that is going to be our new home. That we're going all in on that. And to ensure that we go all in on it, he ordered, or that they go all in on it, he ordered his men to burn the boats. So burn the ships. That leaves no option of retreat. We go all in or we die trying. So that's an extreme example. Who knows if the story went exactly that way, but that mentality, that burn the ships or burn the boats mentality, Bill and I adopted that immediately. I mean, we knew that story, but we're like, we're going to take this approach, the same approach, and burning the ships for us, the symbol for that, in our lives was going to be leaving those corporate careers, right? So that's the ship we were on. And what motivated me the first time I had really heard the burning the ship story, and I've talked about this in one of my podcasts too, but it was years prior. I remember sitting down with my biggest boss at the time. It wasn't the CEO of Farm Bureau, but the head of the sales department. I forget the title, the VP of sales, director of sales, whatever. Good friend of mine, still to this day. Love him to death. But we were sitting down at a conference after the meetings and stuff, and we were at a bar and we were just having a drink. I think getting ready to go to dinner. And there were some opportunities coming up in that company that were going to kind of be laid out ahead of me, where I was going to maybe be in the runnings to take a new position, a bigger position or whatever. And I remember him like, yes, you're probably the most qualified candidate. I was young at that point. I think I was still in my 20s, maybe early 30s. But he was like, yes, you're the most qualified candidate. But if you do that, you're literally burning the boats on what you're building, and from a sales standpoint, like my own book of business and stuff that I was getting a lot of momentum with. And he said, in life, or he said it just like this. He said, in life, you never want to burn the ships and leave it all behind, because if the next thing fails, you've got nothing to retreat back to. That's what he said. So I was like, all right, well, that's the exact opposite of how I feel. And that's the exact opposite of how I want to approach life. I want to go all in on things and, calculate it, be responsible about it. But I want to go all in on things that might not make sense to everybody else, to leave something behind. So that was years prior. And that mindset, motivated by him saying the opposite, but it motivated me to double down on that mindset. And fast forward all the way to 2022, I got to act upon that, right? I was going to, now it's not as extreme as burning the ships, because yes, I left that career, but I have a resume, I have skills that I can go out and possibly, even if I wanted to go back to that company in some capacity, I could probably get a job with them. Man, I'd have to build myself back up, but my resume with them and my ability and what I've done in business and things like that, it's a strong enough resume to go market myself to other companies if I had to go work for another company. So yes, I burned the ships. That was the mentality, but it was very calculated. So I say all that to say, before we got to 2022, Bill and I were talking about burning the ships. That's where we want to get to one day, potentially. Let's come up with a logo. And that kind of, or for our whole business, that kind of centers around this mentality. So you all know our main business is 608B Capital, which if you're watching, you see up here over my shoulder. And that was our apartment number in college, 608B Clement Street, Rafford, Virginia. That's where we lived for 3 years of our lives. Bill and I lived there together, roommates. And when we decided to partner up, we decided that was our biggest commonality. So we named the company after that. Just means a lot to us, nothing to anybody else. Also, when we came up with that name, we said, let's create a logo. We won't use the logo now because we're still working our corporate careers. We have nothing to brand. We're kind of going to do all this silently, but let's just create it. Just something to keep in a file in the background and one day possibly use. So we said, well, the logo needs to be around this burning the ships. We haven't burned them yet, but like this whole burn the boats mentality. So shout out to Reese Pope, who is one of my cousins, one of my wife's cousins. So by marriage, one of my cousins. At the time, she was still a teenager. She's an artist. So I reached out to her. I said, Reese, here's what we're thinking. Can you sketch us out a few options that like illustrate the burning ship, right? So she came up with a few things, and I just realized I'm not wearing a hat today with the logo on it. So I don't have that logo on my hat, but I got something over here. This is what she sketched out, that ship. So it's got the ship hull with the sail being a flame, burning boat, burning ship. That became our logo, and that's where we're at now. So all that to say, 15 minutes into this is leading to where the podcast started. And when I left that career, there was one thing I was struggling with. I had spent the last 17 years of my life professionally every day waking up and just talking to people, in mostly a positive manner. I had my clients, I was advising them every day. I was getting to interview them essentially and ask questions to figure out what they needed, and then build products around that to service those needs. I got to, as I became a manager, a leader in the company, I got to interview people to hire them. I got to train people. I got to go into offices, and there'd be, 6 agents there or 6 people in the office. And I got to spend days where I'd individually have conversations with them around, not all business, around their families and what they did for the weekend and what they have going on in life and stuff like that. So I was having these conversations that was fulfilling to me. I loved it. I love talking to people. I love hearing what people have going on. I'm a very curious person. The day that I shut the door and walked out, December 31st, 2022, the last day of Farm Bureau, I felt this weight of, oh no, I'm doing this. I'm excited about everything that comes along with this. I'm nervous that I'm leaving all that behind, right? I can still have conversations with people, but it's not a part of what I do every day. Yes, in real estate, you're talking to people, right? I'm talking to contractors, but I'm talking to wholesalers, realtors, all these things. And now that we're lending, we're talking to borrowers and investors. But it's all 99% of it is just very business transactional, right? It wasn't those conversations where I get to spend in-depth time with someone and really ask them questions to scratch my curiosity and all that stuff. So I was losing all that, and I felt it immediately. Like the weeks after that, I felt it weighing on me. I'm like, God, everything about the freedom that I've now given myself is great. I don't have anybody to talk to, right? I can call Bill, but I mean, Bill gets annoyed with all my rambling as well, so he don't want to hear me talk all day. My wife loves talking to me, but at the end of a long day, she don't want to hear me unload everything on her that I've got on my mind, right? So I needed to fill this. So right away, I started saying, okay, I don't know what else to do. I can talk to people all day in real estate, but again, it's business transactional. They're in a hurry. It's not these in-depth conversations. I'm gonna start a podcast. So that's where this podcast was born. Me just literally needing to curate a way to talk to people and to flesh out my ideas. And a lot of them are solo episodes where I'm just talking to a camera like I am right now, but I'm getting this stuff out of my head. And I needed that. So that's where it was born. And we launched it, again, naming it Burning the Ships based off of everything else we've done. And the idea was just simply to be a mindset podcast around this all-in mindset, and we cover all kinds of topics on it, obviously. But that's where the name came from. That's where it was born from. I had 3 goals when I started. None of them were around metrics. I decided early on um, that I was not going to pay attention to like the growth of the podcast. Being realistic, I mean, podcasts are there's a million of them out there. There's thousands of them starting every day, and 1,000 of them drop off every day, right? And this is another one that's about to drop off. But there's so much out there that's consuming people's minds and energies and time and stuff like that. I was just going to be another drop in the bucket in the podcast world. Therefore, I was not really going to focus on trying to be competitive with how many downloads I get and stuff like that, because it was that's a competition I'm very competitive, but that's a competition I did not see enough reward for me to go all in with that, right? Try to make a big production of it and try to really use a lot of resources to promote the podcast and stuff like that. I was just going to let it organically do what it does. To this day, I can't even log into the system that tells us how many downloads it has, right? Our producer, which I'll talk about our producer, Josh Culler, in a minute, he has access to that. I literally could not tell you if the last month of episodes got 1 million downloads or 1 download. I have no idea. So that was not the metrics, like the measurables were not a big deal to me. But my 3 goals were, number one, which I've already talked about, to just scratch that itch of having good quality conversations once or twice a week through interviews or letting me flesh out ideas like I'm doing now. That was a goal. Can't really measure that goal, just do it, right? Number 2, once I started, as long as this podcast lived, I was not going to miss a week, right? Consistency is probably the thing that I'm most passionate about in everything I do. So if I start something, I show up on a schedule, I'm going to do it over and over and over. I do it with just about everything in my life until I don't. And when I don't, it's because I've made a choice not to do it anymore. It's not because I've just gotten lazy and missed. So we've done this again. I don't know how many episodes. It's definitely over 200, but from the day we started, the very first episode, for about a year, we did 2 episodes a week. I was doing an interview and then a solo episode, and then we evolved to just 1 a week after that. We have not missed a week. I've had an episode come out every single week, so that was a goal I had, and we've stuck to that. And the third goal, again, hard to measure, but was to inspire people, right? Or motivate people in some way. Again, it's hard to measure. If the algorithm feeds an episode or an interview to somebody up in Wisconsin that doesn't know me, never heard of this show, but they see it pop up and they say, oh, that looks cool, I'm going to listen to it. And they get something from that episode that goes on and changes their life in so many ways, but they never told me about it, or they never reached out, or I have no idea that happened. I can't measure that, right? I don't know that happened. But the way I can kind of gauge it is there's only a handful of episodes that have gone out over the almost 3 years that I have not received a message from somebody about the episode. And those messages could be on social media, text, email. I run into a lot of people when I'm out and about, say, hey, I saw that episode on this, I like that, whatever. So almost every episode we put out, I've gotten some kind of feedback. And if that, you know, some episodes I've gotten flooded with messages because they resonated more than others. But usually I get at least one, usually 2 or 3 or 4 messages or some type of feedback from every episode that they liked that episode, or they liked what this person said, or can you connect me with this person, or what was that book y'all talked about, whatever it is. So I know I was accomplishing that goal of inspiring somebody. I said it on the very first episode we do. If every episode resonates with just one person and they get action from that episode that is a positive to their life, I'm done. Like my job is done and I'm happy with that. I know that has happened. So those 3 goals, being consistent with it, inspiring people, and really scratching my curiosity and having good quality conversations, we've accomplished that. Now, why am I stopping it? So, as y'all know, or you may not know, but our business, my main business, 608B Capital Funding, which is our lending company, has really scaled over the last 3 years, kind of alongside this podcast, right? And with that, through all of that scale and all the building, yes, it was time consuming, but it kind of in a different way, right? That was more of raising capital, and for me anyway. Um, and I can manage that while doing the podcast. The podcast was never a burden or a compromise to any of that. Well, as the company has evolved, well, now we have a team under us, right? We have a lot of reach. We have a lot of loans out there. We've got $25 million under management. When I started this podcast, I think we had a million under management, right? So it's grown 25 times of where it was when I started this podcast. And that requires a lot more of my attention to make sure that things are running smoothly and we continue scaling responsibly, right? So that requires a lot of time, but it's not just that. The second thing is, um, when I'm a very ADD person. Everybody knows that. If you know me, you definitely know that. If you've watched the podcast, you've heard me talk about it. Um, I get obsessed about things until I'm not, right? So when I'm obsessed with things, I'm all in. As long as I'm getting energy and I'm passionate about that thing, I keep showing up to do that thing in a very obsessive way. I want to do it as much as I can. All I want to do is think about it, whatever it is. Well, because of that, I burn out on things pretty quickly sometimes, right? Sometimes I can be, and I do things for a period of time consistently, because consistency is always a big factor for me. But when I stop getting energy from it, I'm done. Like I do not want to carry on something that is not feeding me in the way that it was when I was obsessed or passionate about it. So you hear that and you think this podcast, oh, it's not giving me energy anymore. It does, but not near as much as it did. And I have found other things that are providing me more energy with my time than this podcast. And what I mean by that is I've done over 200 episodes. There's only so much mindset stuff I can talk about. And there's only so many questions I can ask over and over and over to people before it starts getting a little redundant and I'll start getting bored with it. And that's where we're at. So I'm just being completely transparent. I'm at a place now with this particular podcast where now it's becoming a burden on me, on my time. I have so many other things, irons in the fire that I'm working with. I have the Dealmaker Catalyst podcast, which is giving me a lot of energy, and that will unlikely burn out because I'm actually talking about specific real estate topics with people every week or every couple weeks. So that is really feeding my energy. I'm getting a lot of energy from that. So I'm going to continue doing it. This one, I'm not getting it anymore. If you've noticed the last probably 20 episodes, 15 of them have just been solo episodes of me. Why? Because I really haven't been motivated to go out and find guests for this podcast, right? I haven't been motivated to have the same similar conversations that I've had with everybody that's come on here, talking about what their mindset is and why they're different, what do they like the journey versus the destination. All that stuff's cool, but I've asked it 100 times, 200 times. I'm a little burnt out with that type of conversation. So I've been doing solo episodes. Well, here's what happens on solo episodes. We record, I usually try to have episodes banked so that our producer can produce them on Friday for the following Sunday, right? So they usually do about a 9 or 10 day window that they want to have something that they can produce, have it quality checked and ready to go on the following Sunday. Well, here lately, Friday rolls around, I haven't, my schedule stays so packed with business stuff or personal stuff with the kids, or occasionally I want to get out and fish and play golf too. Well, my schedule stays so packed with that, the podcast isn't top of mind. I get to Friday, I'm getting a text message from our producer, Josh, saying, hey man, I don't see anything recorded. Today's our production day. So I'm having to drop what I'm doing, book it if I'm not at my office, book it over to my office, set up the light, set up the camera, and literally with no planning, just ramble about a random topic. That's a burden to me, right? I don't get energy from that at all. I'm having to, because I'm not planning properly for it, or I'm not getting energy out of it. It's not top of mind until last minute and I'm having to throw something together. So for all those reasons, um, it serves me no value to continue doing this podcast. Now, I understand there are ways that I could be more efficient with it, be a little more strategic with guests and stuff like that. But at this point, the energy and time that all that's going to take, I'd rather put that elsewhere. I'd rather put it into the Dealmaker podcast. I'd rather put it into my business. I'd rather put it into myself personally, my kids, my wife, all of that stuff. So for that reason, we're going to table it for now. I mentioned Josh Culler a couple times, who has produced the podcast since probably for about a year and a half now. So the first year and some change, Tim Blodgett, who many of you guys know, um, who had never produced a podcast in his life, never been on a podcast, nothing. When I said I want to do a podcast, I also said, Tim, I've got no idea how to produce a podcast. I don't know how to make it work. I don't even know how to work a camera, a microphone, or anything. I can just talk and get guests on here and interview them. So Tim went to work doing all the research, figuring out the way to make this as quality as possible with very little budget. We were not going to throw much money at this. So early on, if you go back and look at early episodes, a lot of them I recorded with my cell phone and the cell phone mic. Like I didn't even have a wireless Bluetooth mic early on. And then we got a little bit better mics and we got a little bit better camera. And then that evolved to where we have a nice camera, nice mics, quality is a lot better. But early on for that first year, Tim was doing all the research, figuring out how to get it from a video recording into a platform that can push it out on all these sites. And he learned on the fly. We both did. And he managed it and held it down great for that first year. Well, as we started gaining legs, we was like, let's maybe research and find a producer, somebody that we can turn this over to every week, so it's not pulling us away from the main thing we need to focus on, which is our business. So reached out. I'd seen some of Josh Culler with Culler Media, Culler. Seen a couple of his ads or some of his reels on social media. Reached out to him, set up a call. Right away, within 10 minutes, I said, okay, this guy knows his stuff. This is who we're going to go with. We didn't even shop it with anybody else. So we started, I think he started, again, producing, took over like January of 25, I believe, yeah, 2025, and hit the ground running. Helped us. He just took everything off of our plate. Literally, all I have to do with this podcast, he had to teach me how to work Riverside, which is the platform we use to record in it. Gave me a few tips around better camera quality and stuff like that. And now I literally today, I come in, I set my light up, I turn my camera on, I put my mic on my thing. I also have a big mic, but I like this one better because it's not in my face. I do all that. I record it. I hit stop record and I walk away. No involvement at all. Then it goes off to wherever it goes with Josh, and he and his team make it come out to what you're hearing and seeing in its final form now. I cannot speak highly enough about Josh Culler. He's also managing the Dealmaker podcast. So if you've seen or watched that one or listened to it, all of that great production is Josh and his team. Josh has been fantastic in a lot of aspects. Number one, like like any other company, he's going to make some mistakes. So there have been episodes that come out where I notice something's wrong, or maybe a show note is wrong, or actually I usually don't know it. Somebody will email me after the fact saying, hey, or text me, we listened to this episode and noticed this or that, or whatever the case may be. And I reach out to Josh. He says, I'm on it, takes full ownership, researches what happened, identifies it. That mistake doesn't happen anymore. I can't ask for more than that. And very few mistakes, but when they do happen, he takes immediate ownership, addresses it, fixes it, moves on. Number two, Josh has been very patient with me. As I mentioned, as I've gotten into the last several months, this podcast has not been top of mind to me at all. I rarely think about it. And I never listen to episodes. So I really, it's not on my mind at all. It's just something I have to get done. That's where it's turned into. Well, Josh, as I mentioned, they need to produce, like, get these things turned out. He produces a lot of podcasts, so he's got a schedule he works on. Well, Friday comes around and it's the burning the ships day to produce that for the following Sunday or 2 Sundays from now. He doesn't have anything to work. So he's been very patient with me as I continue to forget to have something recorded by Friday. And usually I'm doing it late Friday or the following Monday. Super patient, always accommodating, fantastic. So I say all that to say, if you're thinking about doing a podcast, your own, or you have one that you're doing and you're kind of trying to piece it all together yourself, Culler Media, Josh Culler is your guy. I cannot speak highly enough. 5 stars across the board. I literally have no negative feedback with how he's handled things. He's able, again, to be very accommodating. He owns everything. It's, most 99% of my communication, he's got a bunch of podcasts he manages, but 99% of my communication is direct between me and him. And that's refreshing. So with all that said, guys, as hard as this is, because I hate ending anything, right? I'm quick to end things, but I don't like to do it, right? I don't like to do something. I take a lot of pride in doing things for a long time, right? Sustaining things. I take a lot of pride in um, this podcast, again, saying that we've been consistent every week for however many weeks it's been doing it, but almost 3 years. I take a lot of pride in that. So to stop that, from a pride and ego standpoint, I don't like that, but I know it's necessary. And I'm very proud that we've been consistent up to this point. I take a lot of pride in, um, like I mentioned earlier, motivating and inspiring people. And it's not so much me doing that, but me curating that, right? Getting guests on here that talk about things that resonate with people. I'm very proud of anything I can do to facilitate that. Where I will continue to scratch that itch is through the Dealmaker Catalyst podcast. I'm still going to do that. I'm still going to have a podcast sitting right here, camera turned a little bit to get the full Dealmaker sign, but we'll still roll on with that. I'll get to scratch that itch and still be proud to provide something that helps people. Um, I'm very thankful for all of my guests. A lot of my guests, guys, if you look back at my guest list, a lot of them are friends or people through my network that I've known along the way. And I've never paid a guest, so they've volunteered an hour of their time to come on this show to share their experience and their knowledge and wisdom that ultimately helps people. I've also had a lot of guests on here that had literally zero knowledge of who I am, who Burning the Ships was, anything about me, but I was able to reach out to them. And because I like their content, I like their ideas and things that I've seen on social media, and they agreed to be a part of it. And they had nothing to gain from that. And I think, like, it's allowed me to get really some folks, and I by doing what I'm getting ready to do, I'm going to leave people out, and I don't intend to do that. But just top of mind, some folks that stand out is, I had I'm a hunter and I love the outdoors. And for years, so like I admire or look up to a lot of hunting, quote unquote, celebrities, people that put out videos on YouTube's or they have hunting shows on the different networks and stuff like that. I've watched them since I was a kid. Well, I was fortunate enough to have a few of those folks and one of them is Aaron Warburton, who runs the Hunting Public, which is one of the YouTube's biggest outdoor shows right now. But he owns that. He was gracious enough to give me his time and talk about how he built all that. Um, I had, I've had several folks like that on. I'm drawing a blank right now, but those folks, otherwise, I would have, without this podcast, I would have never met them. I would have never engaged with them. And every one of them, I've been able to keep the conversation going and stay in touch with them. And that's been been amazing to me. And that's kind of been a personal, selfish highlight. The conversations I've had. I mean, hell, the one that stands out the most just because it kind of hit the algorithm and went. And I think to this day, still one of our most downloaded episodes, but Wendy Lynn, she came on here, shared a story about her childhood and just life. And, I encourage everybody to go back and listen. All these episodes will still be there, so you can go back and listen to them. But that one got me. Like, it was a really powerful episode, and I think it resonated with a lot of folks. I had Erin Slivko on here. And Erin, she's not a influencer by any means on social media. She lost her daughter when her daughter was like 5 years old to brain cancer. I met her at an event. I heard her story at an auction. They were doing a fundraiser for a charity that she started. And I talked to her. I was like, hey, I got a weird question to ask you, and I know it might be uncomfortable, but would you be willing to come on and tell that story? And let's try to raise some money for that charity. And she did it. And she sat across from me, virtually, and told every step of that process, from her daughter being born to 5 years later finding out she had brain cancer, to ultimately her passing away, and then the aftermath of all that. She did it with so much confidence, so much strength. I mean, that episode's one of the few that I didn't have words, right? I was at a loss for words. But things like that this platform has been able to allow me to get in front of folks like that and then share it with you guys, the audience, giving me so much value and so much energy. But like most fires, they do eventually kind of fizzle out. And this one, for me, just for where I'm at right now, what I'm focused on, this one has fizzled out. So with that, for the last time, I will wrap up another episode of Burning the Ships podcast. This will be the final episode for now. And we will put this on the shelf, tie a bow around it, and I will see you guys over at Dealmaker Catalyst podcast if you follow along with that one. And we will still have plenty of stuff going out, business related and motivational and all that stuff on social media. So catch us on all that. Appreciate everybody that has listened, shared, given feedback along the way. Can't thank you enough. And hopefully we will talk to you soon. Have a good one. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Burning the Ships. I want to give a special thanks to our sponsor, 608B Capital, helping real estate investors secure fast, reliable funding to fuel their boldest moves. If you're ready to take your investing to the next level, visit 608bcapital.com to learn more. If you found value in today's episode, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast. Your feedback not only helps us improve, but it also helps us reach more people who are ready to burn the ships and commit fully to their goals. And don't forget to share the episode with someone who needs that extra push to take bold action. I'll leave you with this. Burning the ships isn't just about removing the option to retreat. It's about unlocking the courage to charge forward. No matter the odds, the past is behind you and the future is yours to conquer. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time on Burning the Ships.